I see when you go to these exhibitions, you see so many brands in rugs, in lights,
Yeah.
in laminates, the finishes, flooring.
Yes.
They keep growing, growing.
Yeah. And the followers were increasing. Like I'm waking up the other day, 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers.
Have you come across underdog design or a design focused brand that really caught your eye lately, be it fashion, product, or interiors?
I think a lot of interior product brands which are homegrown nowadays and even collaborating and working with such.
Talk about manifestation quite a lot.
Yes.
I would like to know more.
So I think Learn Design Manifest is a tagline that I came up with quite recently. The day you start thinking that I know it all, I have it all, is the day your downfall is going to start.
How do you manage the balance between your work and your personal life?
So you don't need 100 projects to become popular or successful. You don't need 100 content pieces to go viral. It's that one.
Hi Sarika, welcome to another episode of Headway to Growth. So if someone asks you what you do, how would you introduce yourself today?
Interior designer. Still an interior designer. And then if the conversation is going a little ahead, then content creator and a design educator.
And what is your background? Tell me about your journey.
So I started as an interior designer. I always wanted to become a designer. There was no second option for me. I think I realized that when I was really young. I couldn't pursue a degree. I think that story has been out many times that I'm a self-taught designer. So for many years, I worked as a designer. Started with designing little spaces like bathrooms, kitchens, went on to design whole houses, villas, and stuff. And then content creation started for me in 2022 when I was a new mom in between COVID and I didn't know what to do with my life anymore because that was taking a lot of toll on my mental health. And there were so many hours I didn't need to put in as a designer. And then that slowly sort of migrated to education as well because I felt that there's a gap in the design literacy and we don't have enough courses for interior design. So yeah, influencer is something which I became very accidentally. People made me that, but yeah, it's always been about interior designing, and I think design education and content is a byproduct of that.
You often talk about learn, design, manifest, and I think so. We talk about manifestation quite a lot.
Yes.
I would like to know more.
So I think Learn Design Manifest is a tagline that I came up with quite recently. But I've been manifesting since I was 18 years old. I was introduced to that concept when I was 18 by a book called The Secret. I think it's very popular now. And the word manifest is very popular now. But back then, when I was 18, it was still a very mystical and a magical word. But if you really go deep into it, it's science. There's neuroscience behind it and so many things. So my idea, the entire life that I'm living right now is basically you learn, you keep learning, be a learner. You learn about work, career, your life. You design your life, your career, anything of that sorts, and then you manifest. You basically ask, believe, and receive. So I feel there's nothing which is impossible. You can ask for anything. No jugars, no figuring out how it's going to be done. You detach yourself from the outcome and then it'll come to you. So I think my husband, my career, my life, my home, everything is something that I manifested. So I'm a big believer like that. I feel there's so much that we can manifest, and that's why it Learn Design Manifest.
But is there a process what you follow to manifest? Because recently I had a podcast with another interior designer, and they talk about unconscious manifestation, which is unconsciously there, but there are few people who practice it consciously, like on a daily basis, their affirmations and stuff. So is there something where you follow on a daily level?
Yes, I do. I mean, I'm no expert at it, but whatever little I know is that yes, affirmations are a very much a part of it. I do have a routine, like I set my goals, I have a vision board. Every morning, I have a routine where I sit down, meditate, manifest my day, think about the things. So I spend a lot of time doing activities which help me with self-awareness because we're living in a world where you can procrastinate really quickly and easily. And thanks to social media and the fast-paced life with 10-minute deliveries and everything happening so quickly, I have a habit of slowing down and actually thinking about what I really want and what matters to me. So manifestation basically says that you attract who you are. Me to attract anything in my life, I need to be at that same energy, for which I do some practices every morning, every night. So I don't know a lot about, things in detail. Like some people even go to stones and stuff like that, and they have all sorts of meditations that they do. For me, it's very basic. It's an integration of whatever I do in a day. But yes, I keep working on it. I read a lot. I think now I've reached a level where I'm reading a lot about manifestation from the neuroscience perspective. That it's actually all backed up by science. It's no magic or ऐसे झाड़ू वो क्या बोलते हो जादू टोना वाली चीज नहीं है. It's actually science. But yes, I have manifested some big things which makes me believe in it a lot more. But yeah, I meditate a lot because as a person, naturally, I'm not positive and, it's not something that is natural in me. I need to work. I need to practice this every day or else I'll go back to my default negative self. So like you exercise for your body, you meditate for your mind.
What is your routine like? What's your day like?
I start my day really early. Like I'm an early riser because I can't be awake post 9:30 in the night. That's always been me. A lot of my cousins' friends complain because I'm not a night person. I wake up really early before waking up my son for school and stuff. And I have like my first couple of minutes to myself where I set the intentions for the day. I do my gratitude affirmations. I meditate, think about a lot of things, walk, do a little exercise, and then I start my day. So once my son is off to school, then work, whatever it is. I mean, the kind of work that we're doing right now, no day is the same. There's no routine as such. One day I'm on a site, the other day I'm shooting content, and the other day I'm shooting a podcast or probably taking a course online. But I do wind up most of my work by 3 when my son comes back unless there's something very urgent or important. And then I'm a mother full time after 3.
So do you think that if you design your day or if you address your day to a limited timeline, you get things much more faster? Like if I had the entire day to do a task, I'll take entire day.
Yeah.
I had say by 3, if you want to do your content, you want to do your interior design stuff, you want to do your courses, everything. And if you're able to wrap up by 3, that means you to get a lot done by 3 and everything is
Yeah.
time based.
Yes, because when you set your goals and you do time blocking, you won't procrastinate a lot. If you really think about it, if somebody who's working for 8 to 10 hours a day, usually the main tasks or the important work is done in 2 hours only. But they spread it out at the 8 hours. You're picking up your phone, you're getting distracted by 100 other things happening around you. But if you're really focused, you can work for 2 or 3 hours a day and then you can be done. I do that a lot. I do time blocking a lot. It's also it also started happening because I'm a mom. I know I don't have that kind of time to waste. So I need to finish up my tasks in a certain amount of time. So when you set intention, when you set goals, it gives you a lot of clarity when things are planned. Of course, still things can go haywire, but still I feel that you can work a lot better when you do time blocking and when you're very, very clear on what you want to do. Otherwise, the entire day you spend just wandering around, scrolling, mindlessly thinking about there's so many thoughts that we get in a day. So I think I'm very focused like that. And why I'm focused is because I honestly don't really care what's happening around me. I just focus on my goals, my life, because otherwise you can really get stuck with so many things happening around.
You mentioned one of these conversations. I was watching one of your interviews where you mentioned that your entire life changed after you had a son.
Yes.
And now I think with interior designing, you're doing content as well. How do you manage both? How do you manage the balance between your work and your personal life?
So I think before I became a mom, I was just another designer working for 15 to 16 hours a day on sites. The phone starts ringing at 6 a.m. in the morning, handling so many things together. And then COVID happened. And then I became a mom during that time. So anyways, the world was shut. Now, the thing that changed in me was when I became a mom, there was something extraordinarily magical that happened. I was like, I'm able to feed a child and I'm able to grow a child because you know how quickly children grow. That gave me a sense of power. I know a lot of people go through postpartum depression and stuff like that, but I had this immense sense of energy and belonging. I was so fully aware of myself as a person that if I can do this, everything else is so small. I mean, I don't think there's any bigger job than giving birth to a child or raising a child. That gave me this power that I can do anything. A. B, I was also sort of in this rebellious era of mine because everybody around me was like, take a break and you can't do both. You cannot be a mother and still have a thriving career. You have to leave or pause one for a while. And I was in this rebellious era of mine that I'm going to do both. मैं तो करके दिखाऊंगी. How dare you tell me that I can't do both? So when I said that, I think I put it out in the universe. The universe also started giving me opportunities and started sort of, how the algorithm also works. So thinking about something and you see more of that around you, whether it's on or offline. I came across so many people and so many inspirations at that time I found where people were managing both. And I was like, something I need to do with my life. And then content started. And then I just figured out that you can actually work less and do more. I started applying the 80-20 rule, which is the Pareto principle. And I just felt my whole life was like, it was a myth. इतना झूठ बोलेगा ना हमें ज़्यादा काम करो मेहनत करो. The more hours you put in, the more you earn. The bigger firm you have, the more money you have. And I was like, नहीं ऐसा तो कुछ नहीं है. I can work 2 hours and also still do that. I can still be like solo, a freelancer, a mother, and do that. So something changed in me. Something shifted. I started doing smart work more than hard work. And even today, if you ask me, I don't know why people find it so difficult to believe that I'm doing so many things, but I still put in just 4 to 5 hours a day to work. Maybe I've cracked the code of understanding what matters to me, but yes, I just chose the right kind of things, the opportunities, and I say a lot of no's now, which I didn't do earlier on. So I think when you start saying a lot of no's, you make space for the right kind of yes, and you just need those. You don't need 100 projects to become popular or successful. You don't need 100 content pieces to go viral. It's that one. It's that one project, that one breakthrough project, that one reel which takes you viral, that one course that can sort of, make you popular in terms of education and stuff like that. So I think I cracked that. And I'm just doing those things.
And what was the one which...
Yes, because I'm very self-aware of myself and I do research a lot, not what others are doing, but I research about what worked for me.
So what worked for you? What went well?
In terms of content, I think when I started, I did have first mover advantage. I wouldn't lie. There were very, very few people in this space. I never came across anybody who was doing it. Of course, later I came across a lot of people who are now also my friends and colleagues doing interior design content. But I also started by sharing aesthetic images of my projects, the ones that I had done over the years, documented little pictures, 3D renders and stuff, to a point where I realized that people don't really care about what, they care about how and why. And that's what I started sharing. So rather than showing a picture of a room, I would break it down into 10 pieces of reels, because reels had just started in 2022. So I would open a door and show how the mechanism is working. And I just left it to the audience. Audience kept asking me questions and I'm like, let me just make a reel out. And I think the first reel which had gone viral for me was of a hidden door. I think people were really fascinated कि दरवाजा कैसे छुपा है paneling के पीछे.
Right.
Honestly, all the reels which have gone viral for me, so when you say viral, it's something which went above 1 million, right? For me now, I think I have more than 250 videos which have gone viral. And you can also see, now Instagram has given you that feature that you can also go on the insights and see which reel gave you how many followers. So I studied that and I saw that, okay, this is the kind of content that is working, by the way, at a given point of time. So it's not that what was working 2 years ago would work now. So every 3 to 4 months, I did like an audit, like you do in, your...
Yeah, my chart account.
Yeah. So I just did like an audit and I saw, okay, this is working for me. Let me make more of this. Because I have access to sites, because I'm a designer, it's a bad product. So creating and curating content was never difficult. It was just getting out your phone, making a video and just putting it out. And I was enjoying it so much because it's simple as compared to...
Because everything was going viral, man. Who wouldn't enjoy the viral thing?
Yeah, I won't lie. But the complexities of interior design and the slowness of a project is so hard that this was giving me that quick success and happiness, which was making me... I was jumping like a baby that, oh, this is also gone viral, this is also gone viral. And the followers were increasing. Like I'm waking up the other day, 10,000 followers, 50,000 followers. Yes, it was crazy. People were thinking that I'm doing something very wrong. And this was such a new space for me. So I know what went viral. I know what worked for me and I've done it multiple times. Now, of course, I feel it's become slower and harder, but then I've made that milestone mark, so I'm happy. ऐसे तो फिर हम 50 million पहुंच जाएगी.
It is not true as on today, because at that point you had connected with a niche where it was a niche where the people didn't know what happens at the background. People didn't know the process.
Yes.
And you learned it on your own. Yes. But if you're starting off today,
it's very difficult. I have started a new page for my design school. It's very difficult. Even I have 1 million more than 1 million followers on another account. That page still has 50 by 100. Today, it's not easy to grow a page. At that time, being consistent, posting every day, posting the content which people were liking, using viral music, all of that was working for me. Now, I think the algorithm is very different. Like I said, you're not just competing with probably designed reels, you're competing with every piece of content that is out there.
Right.
So it is
There's so much happening.
but I think now the numbers and virality don't really matter that much. I think you can still monetize your content at 100K more than probably at 1 million. I just read an article which said there are more than 100K creators in India who have more than 1 million followers. But is every creator monetizing it? No.
Right.
Because going viral is very easy nowadays. You can create literally anything in that video could hit 1 million views. But the point is, what value is it adding? So now things are very different. I wouldn't say that you need to be at 1 million to monetize your content. You can monetize your content at 50K, 10K, 100K. It's another game altogether now.
But if someone's starting off their page, the Instagram page, and who does not have a page, what would be your advice? Like, as on what's happening today?
Make it a byproduct of your life. Whatever niche you're picking up, firstly pick a niche. Honestly, nobody's interested into what you're wearing, where you're going, what you're eating, unless you're a celebrity.
Right.
People have no interest. So if you think people come and tell me I want to become an influencer, but in what? What do you want to influence? I want to become a content creator. In what? So you need to pick a niche, one. Second, make it a byproduct, because when you make it a byproduct, creating content would never be difficult because it's coming from your life. If you think you're going to hire a team and then probably go every day, curate pieces of content, there'll come a saturation point. Then you will at some point feel a big burnout. Like if you ask me today, after creating more than 1,500 pieces of content and for working more than 3 years into content creation, I still can give you 15 ideas like this because things are happening around me and I can pick up ideas from there and just create content. So anybody who's starting out today is just see what's happening around you. You're a student, you're particularly in this field, interior design, don't straight away jump into creating content. First, work a little into the field. Because if you're thinking, I'm just going to go touch a material and start making content, audience is not stupid. They know after a while that this person is credible. This person is just making content for the sake of.
You are a self-taught designer. Like me, like I was taught accountant, had no clue on what interior design is, and I know, and you have learned the trade in the most raw manner.
Yes.
For someone starting off without a formal degree, what is the first practical step they would like to take to gain the essential and hands-on on-site experience? How?
Go on a site, see things, just observe. I know obviously now an experienced designer, I wouldn't be on a site all day long, but when I started off, I think for the first couple of years, I was on site maximum of the time. It's messy, it's dirty. And anybody who comes up to me, especially females, and they ask me, I want to become a designer, the first question I ask them is, are you okay with your hair getting messy, dusty, and your skin getting spoiled, and your feet always in dust? Half of them run away after it. And because it's a very tough field. It's a hard field. And you need to be in dust to learn about this field. It doesn't happen behind a laptop or a fancy office, and it's not as glamorized or glorified as it looks on social media. It's very messy. So be ready to go into the mess and, put your feet into dirt. The maximum what you can learn is from practical site experience and vendors. Now, these people may not be talking on probably any platform or going on events and exhibitions. They might be sitting in the thinnest of lanes in the markets, but they have more experience. They have more life experience. They have more site experience. If you can learn from them and then combine it with technology, that's the perfect combination in today's day and time. So be old school in your learning, but don't be afraid of learning technology because the world is going really fast ahead. Learn AI, learn your softwares, learn how to use a computer, because if that combination you can bring together, that's the perfect way of growing in today's day and age, I feel.
Looking at on-site, like you learned most of your on-site experience through your contractors, through your family-run business, which we spoke about, and something where how does AI play a big role in terms of the interior designing and how it's going to shape up? Like,
see, AI is honestly here. Everything whenever it comes up comes with its pros and cons. I know a lot of people think AI is here to replace us. It cannot replace us. You need to give it the right kind of prompts to generate things faster. But for those prompts, you still need human beings, right? And interior design is such a complex field. Half of the time, more than half of the time, people don't even know what they want, what they'll ask AI. I need a decent, beautiful looking room. That's the input we get from clients, right? That's so subjective.
Make my house the best.
Beautiful.
The beautiful.
When I ask my clients, what do you want? A nice house. What is a nice house? So you still need humans, you need emotions. But if you can combine it with AI, it's just making your job easier. I still remember investing in lakhs of rupees and buying these expensive laptops and systems to render visualizations and 3D renders, which used to take hours to create back then. Now AI is helping you to create that in minutes. Use it. But still, the original design, the inputs are yours.
Right.
So AI is definitely here to help us if you use it in the right way. It's a combination of your human feelings, tendency to work, plus technology. And that combination is great. The people who are really rejecting it right now, I don't know what fear they have. All of us are replaceable. All our jobs are replaceable. But you as a person, you are not replaceable. If somebody is getting work done from you as a person, the humanness, the emotions you get to a project cannot be replaced by any machine or technicality. So it's a combination, I feel. And it's definitely here to help us. I use AI.
So what are the top 3 tools you would like to?
So I've explored a lot of tools, but honestly, what's working best for me right now is ChatGPT.
Oh, yes.
It creates wonderful photorealistic renders. We're still not there yet, but I think we've started using it in our firm as well. We're still creating 3Ds in our softwares like SketchUp, AutoCAD and stuff. Technical drawings and all, still AI cannot figure out. But like for the final photorealistic render, which earlier on we used to use other softwares to create, which took
Photoshop and stuff.
V-Ray, Lumion and stuff, that is getting replaced with ChatGPT because I just did a workshop on the same. It takes hardly minutes. And even for people who don't hire designers, you click a picture of your living space, you like a sofa online, you can actually ask AI to place that sofa and show you how the space is going to turn out to be. So like those visualization things, I'm using AI. Then, for material comparisons, if I want to create a quick BOQ, a quick presentation, the tedious jobs, which is very much part of interiors, but people tend to forget that we are also making those presentations and drawings. That AI is making very easier.
Which is a tool you use for BOQs and
I am using ChatGPT for
everything.
I use Canva and ChatGPT. These are like my go-to tools.
That
They are replacing people because honestly, if I'm hiring somebody to make a BOQ or presentations who they're taking entire day to do so, the same job can be done in few minutes. I would rather use that person on something which AI cannot replace, which is on-site checking, talking to the client, being a therapist to our clients to calm them down. That you need people. But for this, come on, you can use technology. I think you should.
I mean, I had got a lot of information about you before coming to the podcast, and I had this deep research on Gemini. So Gemini has a free version where you could do deep research. ChatGPT, it's a paid version.
Yeah.
So got all the information in terms of your YouTube, everything.
Oh wow! I haven't reviewed that when I look at.
Yeah, so that gave me a lot of insight within probably 1 or 2 hours on you in terms of your journey and all that stuff. So yeah, I think so. That's something. Again, how to use it is on your way.
If I'm supposedly using AI to do a comparison between a BWP and a BWR ply, for example, I still need to have some basic knowledge about it, and I need to know these terms in between what I'm comparing. They could fool me if I don't put the right kind of prompts. You'd still need to know things. It's just gonna be like a catalyst. It's gonna add on. It's gonna help you save time. That's it. But it cannot put things into your brain which you don't have.
Right.
So it's very much you. You just need to learn how to use these to your benefit.
You began your career 13 years ago. What is the biggest challenge in the industry for new designers entering the field today compared to when you started?
The field has become very glorified and glamorous, which was not like that 13 years ago, honestly speaking. It's good in a lot of ways that people know about interiors so much. Thanks to so many events, so many things, so many, glamorous things happening around us where they put spotlights on interior designers and content creators. Fame has suddenly become a part of it, which was very much not there when I had started my career. When I had started my career, it was very basic. Do your job, come home. Even documenting projects and all was something which we didn't know. Now I think people are getting really confused with the idea of becoming a designer, or should I become like a popular figure into the field of design. I mean, still people who are doing great projects might not be on the cover of magazines, but are still successful. So I think the idea of success has changed, which has messed up a lot of people's mind. So that is challenging, I feel. Because when we started, I didn't have anything to compare to. I just focused on my craft and learning. Now you have so many things that you have to think about. You have to think about a social media account, a presence, what to say outside, how you portray yourself. So I think those image issues were not there when I started out. And that's very challenging for a newbie to start off with, because they do ask me such questions, the new ones who come in. So I still tell them to go through the old school traditional route. Now it's somehow just become about that if you're not published here or if you're not been seen into this event, that means you're not working. But that's not true. I think that's a bit challenging.
So I think so you got to ignore the shiny syndrome in the business and then focus only the core values on what designing is all about.
Because that's a very small percentage of people, right? People are still doing real work behind the cameras.
What are the key game-changing advice in last 5 years of being you would like to share?
I think the biggest one being detach yourself from the outcome and the success. It's not fully yours. Because one thing which I've learned in the last 5 years, three to be precise, is that success comes to you but can go away also as quickly as it came to you. So keep working, enjoy it, celebrate it, embrace it, but don't get too attached to it. Second thing which I've learned in the last 5 years is that always be a learner. Always learn. The day you start thinking that I know it all, I have it all, is the day your downfall is going to start.
Right.
If you're a student all the time, if you keep learning, you will be successful. I think the third thing is be authentic, because in today's day and time, it's very easy to be somebody else. It's very easy to perceive and, form a false image of yourself thanks to social media. But that doesn't go a very long way. People are still thriving as social media content creators, or anybody in any niche, are the ones who are extremely authentic and true to themselves. Even if they've made mistakes, just embrace it. I think these are the three lessons I've learned.
Your partner has been a game changer for you professionally and personally. I would like to know more how he's helped through the journey.
So I think I've spoken about him a lot, and lately he's been enjoying that attention also.
Might as well enjoy the
Yes.
attention.
So he's a very simple, basic, desi guy. I think I met him at a very early start of my career. I was about to start in TDS, and I met him in my second year of college, 6 years older than me. So I think from that point, has played a pivotal role in my career, from introducing me to softwares and then helping me out and stuff like that. So by profession, he's an IT engineer. And when we got married, so his day usually starts a little late when it comes to his work, because he has US-based clients. So he used to have his first half free. So he started accompanying me to sites. And he's an engineer by studies, and all. I'm also an MBA. So he has this nature of opening things. You know how engineers are. They would open a laptop, phone khol denge. And he had a lot of interest in wires. So first few times when I took him on site, I saw him working with an electrician, opening up boxes, and that's how he is. So in my house today, we have never called an electrician, carpenter, or plumber for minor things. Flush kharab hai, leakage ho rahi hai, wire kharab ho gayi, he just solves it all. My mom actually waits for him when we come. And then, isko hangy van do na. So he's that kind of a person. Kisi ka kuch toota hoga, gira hoga, he'll fix it. And I saw him being really interested into these things. He was very passionate. So I think that is one part which I lack. I've always been a creative person. So technicalities mein he started helping me out. And then business mera zero tha. Dabba gul. I was that kind of a person जिसको कोई भी convince कर सकता है emotional story सुना के, and I could work at any rate. That was the kind of person I was. So he came in, he used his MBA and all of that, and he like increased my prices, and then he structured my work a lot. And he's always been a part of my work. He still has his own work and everything, but he helps you with the main major decisions, and now he manages me as a content creator.
Wow, that's crazy.
So whenever somebody asks me, give me your manager's number, but itni sharam aati hai, no, he's my husband, but he just manages me. And then they're like, oh, and I'm like, yeah. So he just loves being like a problem solver for me all the time. And he's an equal parent. He's a hands-on father. Like even now, my son is with him. So he's always been like, you do your stuff, I'll take care. And when you have an equal partner who takes care of everything, there are no stereotypical.
Especially our type of business, it helps a lot.
Yeah. So when you have that kind of a partner who actually this is very normal. I don't know why in India people have these gender defined roles, but actually this is how it's supposed to be, that a man and woman don't have gender defined roles.
Right.
So he takes equal part in everything that I do, and that sorts of has helped me a lot to grow. So we fit like puzzle pieces, and so there's this tagline which I always say for both of us. It's like technology meets creativity. I think that's a perfect combination. It's a deadly combination.
Is what he brings.
Yeah. So the pieces which I miss, he sorts of fills it up. And his creativity is zero. He doesn't even know the difference between hot pink and pale pink or, that kind. I think it helps. He never interferes in the creativity bit. I never interfere in the business part of my work. He takes care of everything. So it is a good combination, I would say.
And I was watching one of your podcasts. You don't have your team is you and your husband, like in terms of your whole country.
I read majorly our core team is me, my husband, and my brother.
Yeah.
And luckily or ironically, whatever you want to call it, both of them are Saurabh. Both of, like I have two Saurabhs in my life. So my brother takes care of the architecture interior firm, and he takes care of the content managing part now. Majorly it is us, and then we collaborate with freelancers. We have a couple of employees working for our architecture firm, but for content and everything else, we actually downsize. So we do have like a photography team, then we can call them whenever needed for a branded shoot. But majorly it's us, and that's a conscious decision because I have done the big firm, big team built. And I downsized actually last year only because I realized that I want to be more dependent on processes than people. And I enjoy it that ways because I know my goals, they're getting achieved. Because there comes a point in your life when I think you keep on a scale up. There's no end or limit to it. And you realize that there comes a point that you're actually now working for the people than for yourself. And I am a free bird.
Salaries and stuff.
Yes, I don't like that pressure on my life. So that's why I started collaborating with teams and freelancers. Like even for my courses business, I have outsourced that service rather than having it in-house. So I like that independence. That okay, for 2 months, if I decide I don't want to work and travel and stay in another country and just be free. You don't want that pressure of paying salaries.
To be all of us.
So it's a bit unconventional, I know, but it's just a personal choice.
But is there any must-have roles for managing your content business? Like the role that this you cannot do without a full-time role I'm talking about, or there's no role as such you can do.
See, again, because for me it's been a byproduct of my work, and honestly, I never curate content. It's always videos randomly shot on sites, and if I'm going somewhere, if I feel this could be a piece of content, I'll shoot it and keep it in my phone and then edit it and post it. I don't have a content calendar. I know people find it hard to believe since I post a lot. But
not everyone has 1.2 million followers in 3 years.
yeah, but it's always been a byproduct of my work. So I'm not specially going unless it's a branded shoot. Then that's obviously very different. So I feel if it's a byproduct of your life and your work, you don't really need a team. I know, and I totally respect people who have made teams for the same. But I personally feel you can do it on more.
And you do your editing on your own?
My own videos I edit on my
everything?
own. Branded content and all, because they have certain requirements and stuff, so that I get edited. Sometimes I edit it on my own, sometimes I get it edited from outside. Shoots I get done as and when needed. I'll hire a photographer. I have one on board, but not on my payroll, like freelancer. And then for other stuff, I think it gets managed. I am managing it. I never felt a burnout. And like I said, I know people again find this hard to believe. And I want to say this as humbly as possible. I don't spend more than 10 to 15 minutes on creating a reel. That's simple.
What are the tools you use for editing?
So I have been using InShot for editing. I used to use Splice. Now I'm trying out the Instagram new app edits. And other than that, I shoot on my phone. For like I said, for brands, they have a requirement. We go shooting professionally. But other than that, no other tool as such. Everything is here in my mind, what I want to create. I do a quick voiceover, and then that's about it.
That's crazy, yeah. Because I think so. When you start understanding how to edit a video, so you know where to call your shots, what re would, and I think so. You're studying yourself enough to understand what you.
I mean, I know I'm no expert at editing. I know my videos are not the best of edit it, like that kind of quality or stuff. But I know that the content that I'm putting out has a lot of power. And what I've understood is that people need the right kind of content and context, no matter how it's shot. I don't think the kind of audience that I will, I'm only talking about myself. I can't really talk about others here. But I think the audience that I have built come for the quality of content I'm creating, not how the video is shot, how I'm looking, what I'm wearing, how I'm talking. What I have heard from people and as a feedback from people and brands that I work with, they've always told me that I'm very simple. My language is very simple, and I think I credit it to the fact that I'm not a polished designer who's worked at a firm. So I think I've learned from contractors, labor. So my language is also like that, simple, easy. So people have told me that a fourth standard child can also understand what you're trying to say. That's how simply you explain things. So like I'm talking to you is like I talk in my videos. So I think I never script my videos. I never write down anything. It's just the video, me looking at it, voiceover, and done. And that's how I speak also. If there's a mistake, there's a mistake. I think that is something which has worked for me. I don't know about others, but has worked beautifully for me.
Because I saw the relatability increases as soon as, because they are
Yeah.
much more larger crowd can relate to what you're talking.
Yeah.
When you're talking something fancy which people don't understand,
Yeah. I don't know any fancy words.
there's a relatability.
Honestly speaking, I don't. So I talk like I have learned on site. Raw, real, authentic.
So let's get
Yeah.
to the rawness of the whole business is contracting. And
Oh
Mano,
my
I get the hardest part in the business, which I also took pace. Like you work lot with contractors, right? Which is a crucial part of the execution business. What qualities you think should a designer who's just starting off should look in finding a right contractor?
There is no right contractor, first of all. You need to work with them. You need to collaborate with them. And firstly, you need to have that kind of a mindset that I am not appointing this contractor or he's not appointing me. It has to be a collaboration, because if they are not working, you be best at your designs, you create the best of AI renders, you have the best of clients, put the most expensive materials, it's going to still go, it's going to end up really badly. What I do observe is, if it's a new contractor, obviously been into this industry for so many years, we collaborate with a lot of familiar faces. But if it's a new contractor, I would ask him to take me to one of his sites, and I would actually not notice the big things. I would notice the small things.
The edge band.
कलम कैसे मिलाई है, उल्टी कलम काटी है टाइल में, skirting कैसे लगा रखी है, like the minor things. If a contractor,
touch and feel the edge bands.
yeah.
You come.
So if a contractor, bubbles तो नहीं है laminate में,
Right.
little things.
Right.
Because वो लोग ना अपना काम आपको macro level पे दिखाएंगे.
बड़ा काम दिखाएंगे.
And वो आपको ऐसे दिखाएंगे कि see हमने यहाँ पे velvet touch किया है, look we've used magnetic taglines, because that is how they want to showcase that, we've been using latest materials and technology, so we are very aware. I don't want to see that. I want to see the nitty-gritties and the small details. One is that. Second, I talk to them, and obviously being experienced, I also read the body language a lot. If a contractor is telling me this project can be done in 2 months, मैंने आप टेंशन पता हूँ 2 महीने में खत्म कर देंगे, I will never. That's a lie. So if somebody is overcommitting,
He wants to pick up the work. That's about.
yes. So I will never hire that person. I want the person to tell me, नहीं, इसमें तो 4 महीने लग जाएंगे, 5 भी लग सकते हैं. I want the person to tell me कि yes, delays आएंगे, problems भी आएंगी, but we'll be there. So I want to, earlier on I used to get into the trap of hiring people thinking or collaborating with people thinking a commitment दे रहा है, इसलिए he sold. ना sold वाली feeling. इसने तो जीत लिया, मैं नहीं. मुझे
बहुत गालियाँ खाने पड़ती है बाद में.
क्योंकि वो छूट है. अगर कोई आपको बोल रहा है ये 2 महीने में
और आप भी झूठ बोल रहे हो. एक झूठ आपको बोल रहे हैं.
And I think I've also changed as a designer.
Education. I think client education.
So if now today a client comes to us and tells us कि नहीं हमें तो 3 months में करना है, मैं नहीं हो सकता. So a person who's telling this to me on my face and telling me the things that I don't want to hear at that point, I think that's the right contractor for me, because कम से कम वो सच बोल रहा है, खड़ा रहेगा, वो problems के दौरान he'll be there, he'll be available, because problems are going to come anyways. So I think that is one key factor or quality I would see in a contractor, very realistically.
यार आप अपना EQ level, how do you manage your EQ level? Like when you go to a site and when things don't go as per plan, for example finishing सही नहीं आई, या edges सही नहीं आए, या laminate 8x कोन में उसने last या बीच में कहीं मार दिया, like whatever the joints and stuff. So you become so very emotionally attached to a project when आप design बहुत amazing करते हो, and then you see like this is not going as to how, and that really picks you. So how do you manage that?
That's good. I cry.
सच्ची सुनना.
I cry. I don't think I mastered my EQ. I have become better at channelizing it. So just last month, I was doing my own house. 13 years experience designer, knows everything, understands the business. Still, when you're in that chaos, things go wrong. Nothing can prepare you for it to be something will go wrong. आप सब कुछ perfect कर लो, best पैसे लगा दो, best teams hire कर लो. I was doing up my own house. It took a toll on my mental health. I felt sick. I was unwell the last month. I took a vacation to get.
एक vacation लेना है so do you
उस vacation में also I went मतलब
I was thinking on yeah.
And my husband was like, he was laughing at me. You are mad. You are so experienced. तो ये दूसरों को समझाते हो अपना वे करते करते बीमार पड़. It's just very chaotic.
It's
And
very
your
tough
own
also. It's
home,
very tough also.
you are even more emotional.
You 100%.
You are even more
वो
vulnerable.
तुम्हें रोज देखना हो चाहिए.
Exactly. And you have to be in that mess. So I think I wouldn't say I've mastered handling my EQ. I have not mastered it anything. I just become better at it. I still cry. Obviously not on site. I used to cry at sites, but I think वो बहुत ही बचकाना लगता है कि मैडम रो रही थी तो हमें क्या ही काम बताएंगी. I go home. I let my emotions out because we are creative people. We cannot hide our feelings. There are different ways of how you channelize it. I'm learning how to channelize my energy, but I've accepted the fact that we are high on emotions because we are designing something with our heart. No matter how much we treat this as a business, it's still very much an emotional thing for us. So might as well accept it. And you grow with it, you become mature. With time, you become better. But anybody who tells you today कि हम तो कर लेते हैं कोई tension नहीं. I can they lie.
I think one of the books which I was reading now, they talk about that one of the most successful people now, they are more prepared for dealing with problems better. Yes, the problems are
You
not
just
going to
become
reduce.
better.
You just become better at.
There's no perfection.
So now the way I react is less compared to where I
Like,
used to react earlier.
I'll be very honest, I've stopped abusing excitement. That is why how I've become better. I have stopped shouting. My vocal, I give my vocal cords a rest. I'm a little better with people, but I'm still at
That
times
aggressive,
firm.
like your emotions come.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, you can't help it, no? When
With
you're
age
managing
also you
things,
mature, the
right.
motherhood also you become patient.
Yeah.
So yes, I'm handling things a little better, but I'm still upset when I'm upset.
Coming to the clients now after contracting is your initial client meetings focus on their story, not aesthetics. How do you manage clients' expectation when they come to you with a Pinterest board full of trends they want to copy?
आजकल तो Pinterest boards हैं जो रील्स के साथ आते हैं.
अच्छा,
वो भी उसको जाती नहीं थी उसकी. So I think my brother really feels annoyed कि ये तेरी रील के चक्कर में and all that. See, honestly, now I started manifesting better and we choose projects. Like I said, you're not selling products, you're selling a service. So the more they want to hire me, even I want to see whether the compatibility works and I work with them. So I think now we don't have a lot of clients who come with Pinterest boards or reels. They trust us. Oh, that's why I come.
What are you coming to
But,
you for?
so we designers are also therapists. I've said this before in a couple of my talks and stuff. And one thing that I am very proud of is I can talk people through things. People don't know what they want. Design is very subjective. They will come up with a lot of trendy things because it's trending or because they like something. But when I talk them through the process, the feelings, the things that really matter, somehow the conversation changes from aesthetics to functionality. So I know how to talk them through it. I will never talk about colors, trends. That's very subjective. आपको जो चाहिए आप लो, I have no issues. I'm not creating a portfolio here to impressing 10 other people. I'm making a home for you, which will be tailor-made for you. So I know how to talk them through, and I talk to them about their lifestyle. How do you wake up? What's the first thing that you do? So automatically the conversation shifts from the superficial things to the more meaningful things. And it usually pans out really well. And I think I'm becoming better at that, which I can very confidently say. So once I have that conversation, I take them through the process. I talk to them about their lifestyle. I let them speak about what they want, because a lot of times they don't know what they want. You need to talk to them, have conversations. What does a therapist do? He talks to you so that you take out the things which are, in layers beneath you. So as a designer, what people miss out on is they straight away jump onto color, finish, money, budget, time.
Understand.
They don't understand the person. I am not designing a home for you. I'm designing a life for you. You'll be living in that house, waking up, drinking your coffee. I need to know what kind of music you listen to. I need to know how your kids feel, what activities they do. And when I talk to you about your life, I don't think you will be interested in telling me I like black or white.
Right.
You'll be more interested in talking about, yeah, you know, I enjoy a cup of coffee. I like sitting with my kids. I like to play the piano and stuff like that. And then when I start curating designs around that, is when you'll enjoy that process even more. So it's not just the home that I'll be giving you after you shift in, it's also that journey that I'm making so comfortable for you. So that automatically shifts the focus from aesthetics to the meaningful stuff.
How you are a very good salesperson. I mean,
I think yes,
Yeah.
I learned that from my chachu because he's into sales since, I don't know, last 30-35 years. But not the kind of salesperson ki zabardasti ye base do. I'll never do that. That everybody knows about.
But most of the designers are not great at sales. Like I meet
Really?
designs, yeah.
I think designers have become salespeople nowadays.
But most of the designers whom I meet,
Yeah.
they get into too much into design.
Yeah.
They forget the commercial and the sales part of the whole business. That's what
I think that's the benefit of being a self-taught designer because you're not too polished and you're not worked in those kind of setups. Then I talk about practicality a lot more. I will never go deep into the design, not understanding that ये source कैसे होगा. Ab like even when I was designing my own apartments on that very first floor, a lot of design decisions were made keeping in mind कि ये तो चढ़ ही नहीं सकता very first floor. That is a practical decision. So when you are talking to the client from all aspects and you're covering all layers, your conversations change. And they also understand कि rather than going through the hassle of putting this up because of the technical issues that we might face, why not go for something else? Or even afterwards, like if you have a home with kids, practically you wouldn't want to put a lot of things because you have kids. You would want to let them enjoy that home that they're growing in. You don't want the Instagram worthy, Pinterest worthy home just to show it to the world if you cannot maintain it. So when you have these conversations, they take a very practical turn. And then people are like, you are absolutely right. This is just so I show them the mirror and I actually talk to them and I explain them the whys. If you talk from a perspective of why I'm suggesting what I'm suggesting, rather than being a salesperson कि ये ले लो क्योंकि ये trend कर रहा है, yeah, this is nice, आपके पड़ोसी को बड़ा अच्छा लगेगा, you know, those kind of things. Most of the people have that mindset. So you have to shift that mindset that we're designing this for you, not for the 10 other people you'll be calling home 10 times a year. That shifts. And then you attract also the right kind of people.
What are the 3 top sales qualities you think a designer should have, which has worked for you?
Emotional connect, right kind of body language, eye contact. Trust me, the same thing said in a different tone can totally change the way you perceive things. And third, be as raw and authentic as possible. You people think dressing up and being this polished and talking in an accent or talking, you know, in a mode which people have created and talking about brands or specific things can help you impress a person. वो भी तो घर आप जैसा देसी बंदा या कोई इधर उधर से आया हुआ, like, you know, must be a normal person. So the more natural you are, the more authentic you are in talking to that person, the more you can sell something to that person. Relatability.
Right.
Why do I talk about generic stuff on my content? It's not always polished or trends that I talk about. I also talk about water seepage. I also talk about basic problems which every home is facing because I want to relate to it. So I think people don't hire designers particularly based on their portfolio because design is very subjective. I feel they hire you because of your credibility and capability as a designer, what kind of problem solving abilities you have. So if you can sell yourself or you can sell a product based on these factors, I think you can sell it to anybody.
But like couple of luxury who design luxury homes and stuff.
Yeah.
They like to be dressed up in certain way. They like to be, I mean, have that substance in them to relate to their luxury.
Yeah, because they want to
Homes.
attract that kind of client. See,
The-
honestly,
right?
see,
But-
I call myself a affordable luxury category designer.
Affordable.
Because that's who I am.
Right. Okay.
Luxury for everybody is different.
Right.
I know how it's perceived online is LV bags and getting out of a Mercedes and having this crore mansion and stuff like that. Of course, if you want to do that kind of work, you yourself also have to have that kind of mindset. And there's nothing wrong in it. I have due respect for that. But अगर मैं वो हूँ ही नहीं, then how will I attract that kind of a client? Then I'll have to make an image. I still have luxury bags, own a luxury car, and have certain things in which I invest in, which I call luxury. But at the same time, I also thrift things. At the same time, I buy stuff from IKEA. I would do DIYs. I'm a mix of both. Right. So the clients also I would want like that also. And the kind of clients that we have are very similar to our family circle. Because then you can understand their mindset a lot better. So the projects that I'm working on, see, as a content creator, my audience might be for the masses. It could be a mix of things. Pehli baat to anybody who's getting interiors done is luxury only in today's day and time. If you can afford a house or are able to do interiors in the house in itself is luxury only. Na?
Right,
Because you
right,
know,
right.
majority of people can't do that. B, उसके ऊपर तो there are many steps and layers, categories हैं बहुत सारी. So maybe as a content creator, if I'm saying 5 Amazon finds, they may reach out to all sorts of people. But in terms of my projects, I'll be able to do the projects the way I have been raised or the kind of circle that I'm working in. Because then I'll be able to understand them better. So I think the kind of clients that I have would spend good amount of money on their homes. But I think the businessmen I work with or the clients that I have would probably spend 50 lakhs on marble. But they wouldn't buy a 50 lakh worth painting. That's the kind of clientele I have. But I understand that there's another level where people want to invest in art, sculpture, and go for really high-end stuff. And I have respect for that. But जब मैं खुद ही नहीं हूँ ऐसी या मैं अपने घर में ही नहीं वो लगाऊंगी, so how do I promote it to somebody else?
Right. And that's what I was talking about. कि
Yeah.
वहाँ पे वो segment को deal करने के लिए they try to be in that segment. So the relatability much more
That
higher.
is why I said be authentic and spend more time into analyzing yourself as a person. I am very fully aware of who I am and I'm very happy and proud about it. Hence, I don't need to pretend to be somebody else to attract a certain kind of project. That minds, and that can change. You can evolve. I never started with villas straight away. I started with 2 BHK, 3 BHKs only, but I grew. And the way I grew, my clientele also grew. The kind of people I work with also grew. You also have certain minimum per square footage of area that we design now because this is not a product. It's a service. You cannot work. You can probably sell 100 pieces of a product, but you cannot work on 100 projects together with the kind of teams you have or the personal touch you want to give. So how do you scale? Probably now from 3 BHKs, I would be doing, if I'm doing 10 projects, which are 2,000 square feet each, 20,000 square feet, I will probably do one project now, just 20,000 square feet. That's the scalability I can talk about. But
In terms of volume.
in terms of volume, but I don't want a 100 people firm. That's a personal choice. So as a small boutique firm, for me, success is working on 4 this scale projects or these kind of clients. There's no upper limit to it, honestly. That is on to you. You know there's no limit to money or growing or anything of that sorts. So you need to know where you're happy and then you need to know how do I scale this even further in my next year.
You think that the funded players like Airspace, Homelane have disrupted the whole market in terms of how interior segment was looked at and how it's being looked at today?
Not really, because that's for a different segment of people. Like I said, for the people who want to do up their spaces in a budgeted manner, I think brands like these are working amazingly well for them. And for a person who doesn't want that mass-produced stuff and who doesn't want their home to look like 100 other homes, would still hire you.
Right.
So this is something which I learned the hard way. Earlier on, I used to think I have to be available for everyone. But no, it's a compatibility game. In a year, if I'm as a firm or as a freelancer, if I'm able to do 10 projects, so if I'm getting opportunities for 100, I need to choose that 10 which work best for me, my growth, my portfolio, my personal growth as well. So brands like these are catering to a totally different market, and the people who are okay and happy to work with those brands would never come to you.
Right.
And the people who would come to you would never work
Look
with
at
you.
that.
So you just need to identify the right kind of people.
And the segment is quite large. Like I mean,
Yes.
the whole India में सबके लिए काम है. That's what I understand.
There is
Like,
so much
सबके
work.
लिए everyone.
There is no competition. So I belong to a family of designers and architects. My brother is an architect. My sister is an architect cousin. Her husband is an architect. And we all have so much work. Now, of course, in the beginning, obviously, we used to fight for leads. But now I think I'm एक दूसरे को pass on कर रहे हैं. मुझसे नहीं होना, can you do it? I don't have time. Because there will come a point in your life. There's so much construction happening and I feel there's more than enough variety.
Coming to your online courses. Your online courses promises to be designer how to use Instagram to grow exponentially. What was the tipping point where you went from simply sharing your work to build a massive engaged community?
So, like I said, I started very authentically about sharing tips and tricks, nitty-gritties, the small stuff which I felt nobody was talking about. Like I said, interior has become a very glamorized field. People look at beautiful aesthetic pictures, and nobody's talking about behind the scenes, the problems, the seepage, how to install things and stuff like that.
Dirty part.
The dirty part of it, the practical, the real part of it is how I like to call it. I just started by sharing that, and then slowly it opened up so many doors for me which I was not aware of, very honestly, at that time. So what I teach in my, so I do more live workshops than I do pre-recorded courses, because I feel you are able to connect with the audience a lot more, and there's some sense of satisfaction when I talk to people and I'm able to solve their queries, because for a lot of people, Instagram is still a very new space. So I tell them to make it a byproduct of their work, even if it's for lead generation or monetizing their content or trying to create a platform like I did for education. It all should be a byproduct. Nobody is gonna want to learn from you if you yourself haven't worked at the side. So once you reach a point that you have gained enough, you start sharing, and that sorts of helps you grow on social media. Of course, there's algorithm, there's trending things, stuff happening, keep changing now and then. But if you are consistent in posting, if you are curating content from whatever is happening around you, from the real things, your experiences, mistakes, people love to see videos which start with a negative notion.
Oh,
Don't do this.
okay.
It attracts people more.
The hook.
Have your hook to be really strong, because it's a fast-paced platform. There are so many people create, and be in front of the camera. A lot of people feel shy. कि हम तो designer है, let me just show my work. No. See, on Instagram in today's day and time, you're gonna get lost if you don't show your face. Because if you're posting a picture of, say, a completed bedroom, it could get lost in the 10 others. But if you are unique. Nobody looks like you. So obviously, if you're coming in front of the camera every now and then, people will relate to you. So if you can come in front of the camera, be consistent. I think social media sort of rewards you for being consistent and being there and posting regularly. And then the audience tells you what you're doing right or wrong. Listen to the audience, not the trolls, like most of the real stuff. They will tell you what's working and what's not, honestly. And I think that's the way how you can grow. I've seen so many people grow on social media and like crazy grow. Of course, now it's a little more difficult because there's so many people doing it, but it's still very much possible. Our field is still fairly new, I would say. It's not saturated yet.
You grew from 800 to 1.1 billion followers
Yeah.
in less than 3 years.
2 years.
2 years?
I was at 1 million at 2 years. Then it became slow, and now I'm at
2 years. And you had such a massive growth. What has worked for you? Like one thing. I'm sure that we are repeating this question, but
Yeah.
still I want to know what has worked for you.
I think consistency and my authenticity.
Consistency and authenticity.
Yes.
What has worked?
Yes, I have been very authentic. I've shared my problems,
True.
mistakes, true. If there has been a leakage, I've talked about it. If there has been a crack in the wall and I've done a mistake, I've talked about it. If I have figured something out, and I think I've talked about the most simple and basic stuff, nothing fancy. That's what I feel. I know for a lot of people it might be something new, but I think I've talked about things which are very basic and you should know. It's more of an informative thing. It's always been about design education. Brands, tagging brands, collaboration started way after, I think, 300K. Before that, if you go deep down my page, it was all hacks. It's still hacks. 70-80% is still hacks, do's and don'ts, and being consistent. I have been consistent. Now, of course, I don't post every day. I post alternate days, or sometimes I skip 2 days depending on how the reel is performing. If a reel is performing well, I'm like, चलन दो इसको भी 2 दिन बाद post कर देंगे. But before that, I think for the first 2 years, I posted every single day.
Wow. So you post 7 times a week.
For the first 2 years.
And now?
Now it's 3 to 4 times a week. I repurpose and reuse my content also a lot. Because for a person who's created more than 1,500 pieces of content, and Instagram is yet not searchable. So I think the reel which has gone deep down, I can post it again and it will still reach new audiences. So I do that also because that's still very much valid. And in our case, as design content creators, a lot of people follow you for a short period of time and their home is getting made.
Right.
And once it's done, they might not unfollow you, but they're not engaged with your content. The reel is still going out to new audiences. That's how algorithm works. So one secret or one thing which has worked for me is the reels which have gone viral and I've got the maximum number of followers, I post them again. After, of course, few months.
Right.
And then they again get me more followers. Then they again go viral. It's a tried and tested method.
So if you have to pick up three niches, right, where in interior designing or take it a broader category of lifestyle, what are the three niches still you feel has a potential of growing to more than 1 million or probably than 1 million?
I think definitely design education is one. I think now content has become a lot about, again, aesthetics and beautification of things. But if you can talk about the nitty-gritties, that still has a lot of scope. Second, I think these home tours, real estate is still a very upcoming market. I have not seen, I've seen the creators doing that, but not a lot of creators are doing it. So that is another niche, and architecture is still not explored right, but interior is still done. Home hacks and all is still there now. Home decor, DIYs is still there. One niche I think works really well, sorry I missed it out, is home finance. So anybody who can start, and specifically for working moms, because a lot of working not working moms, homemakers ask me this, that we have a child and how do we create content from home? If you can share home tips, organizing tips, and you can share these Amazon links, you can also monetize your content with affiliate marketing. That's a huge market right now, and usually it goes viral. Because when you say comment below for link and then you're giving links of things that you've been using around your house, because ghar to ban gaya, ab kya? You need to maintain it, you need to clean it, you need to organize it. I think that niche is also still, there's a lot of scope there. I've not seen many creators doing that.
Your content strategy is to document, not just create. Can you walk us through the practically how does it look like?
So again, a lot of people don't believe me, but I just document 20% of what's happening. If I would go 100% documenting everything around me, मेरे को भगा देंगे site से. Contractor कहेगा मैडम बस videos ही बनाने आती है, काम नहीं समझाती. So when I'm a designer, I'm not a content creator. When I actually take out few days in a week that I go on a site from a perspective that I need to shoot content, or if something is happening, if you see my videos, I am usually there in the hook and couple of scenes, then rest of the videos are actually shot by me from my own hand. So if I think that this is an important essential step putti ho rahi hai, let me just quickly document it. I'll document it and just keep without thinking kahan use hone wali hai ye clip. And I have made folders in my phone. So my phone is filled up with either my son's pictures or interior pictures, videos. And I just put them in folders, painting, plumbing, site construction, stuff like that. And then believe me, every morning I sit down and I think, aaj kya dalu? And I just curate it and I post it. I don't have a content calendar. I don't plan content because I feel it's such a fast changing platform that maybe something that I've planned for 20 days from now might not be relevant then. That's how fast it is. So for example, I shifted to this new apartment and the builder gives you kitchen and bathroom, and we were just getting the gas line fixed, and I saw that there's a smoke detector attached below that. And I was like, wow, yaar, kitna acha content piece. I quickly shot it, edited it, posted it the same day with a link to Amazon because I found the same product on Amazon. And I think that also video didn't go to 1 million, but like 500, 600K because it was piece of information, right? That you need to attach a smoke detector in case something happens, it's going to ring. So I shoot content like this, like it's very spontaneous. And I spot something here or there. Like the other day I was in Thailand, we're getting a foot massage done and there were moldings on the wall. And I saw ki molding mein na, they had cut a switchboard. And I took a video of it, ki ye nahi karna. And I created content out of it, 5 mistakes to avoid if you're designing a wall with moldings. So that's how my mind works. Kabhi bhi light bulb on ho jata hai that, okay, this I need to talk about.
Very intuitive in terms of...
It's around me. Actually, content is around us. So I just spot something, I feel this could be a good idea to share. Or if I'm facing an issue myself, I feel that if it's helped me, maybe it'll help 10 other people. That's how I go about content. It's never planned, scripted, just for brands and...
But yeah, quite nice, because your intuition and your instincts towards the practicalities of the site, which is already dirty, is what you're sharing. And I think so. Then suddenly, आप अपने EQ levels की अभी बात कर रहे थे कि you literally crying, I feel more depressed when I go things going wrong. It's such a relatable topic, and there's so many others also who are facing the same problem.
And I think I've related to more people when I shared failure or sad stories than I've related
Or
to some
exactly.
happy stories.
And that's what people उसमें ज़्यादा their
Yeah.
vulnerability is much more.
And I think
कि हम
that's
अकेले
the
नहीं हैं,
reason
हम
why-
अकेले नहीं हैं इस दुनिया में जो हमारे हालत.
That's how I've created a community also. Like I recently made a video on house shaming. That can we stop house shaming? Because people are in so much pressure nowadays to when they're building houses कि ऐसा दिखना चाहिए, ये होना चाहिए. You know how people are, right? 10 people will come and give them free advices and they'll be like, हम इतनी मेहनत से बना रहे थे और आपको एक सेकंड ही लगा हमें जज करते हुए कि ये क्यों लगाया and all that. And I created a video on that because I myself was facing it.
Oh my.
Being a designer myself, you don't know how many times people have come to me while I'm designing my own home and told me, but you're a designer. You should have done this. But you're a designer. It should look like this. And I'm like, you're literally house shaming me. And when I thought they could do this to me and it could affect my mental health being into this profession, nobody knows this better than me, how much it must be affecting normal people who are making homes every day. And I made a video on that. And I think it was shared a lot because people related to it. It's a problem. People love to do that. They come to your house, doors nahi अच्छे बनाए, height लंबी और पीछे थी. I have initially I used to be furious at those people. तुम्हें क्या पता what all we've gone through? तुम्हें क्या पता what struggles we had? Why we made this decision? It's so easy for people to just come and comment. We live in a country like that. People are not appreciative at all.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, but this is what it is, and that's what paying for us.
Yeah.
Your most popular content is technical tips and do's and don'ts. Why do you believe educational problem-solving content is more effective than building a design brand only showcasing beautiful homes?
Because design is subjective and literacy related to design is still not there as much as it is there, say, in fashion or other fields. Like, I think a girl who's going to buy a lehenga for a wedding still knows brands and fabrics and materials because, you know, fashion is still more relatable to people. But when a person is going to buy tiles or is going to buy marble, still doesn't know a lot of things, even if they've hired a designer. They don't even know the basic terms. So when you create content which is educational and is creating literacy in the most basic manner, people relate to even more and they feel that this person is knowledgeable. I think a person would hire me more because of my capabilities than my design sense because that is anyway subjective. Even if my client loved the project, you might still reject it looking at saying, this is not my style or my vibe. But if you hire me with the mindset that she's capable enough, she knows her stuff, and she is mature and she can handle stuff and she knows कि right ही हमें advice दे रही होगी, she won't fool us with material selection and all. I think that is a deciding factor more than the style that I'm working in because that is subjective. I could still curate something for you in your style, but not at the cost of not knowing how to do it.
And that makes you more original,
Yes,
and you could have much more larger content than saturating yourself.
definitely. Yes.
Because कितना एक घर ब्यूटिफाई कर कितना देखोगे? In the end, you're talking that everything looks the same or the
Yes.
trends are following.
Yes.
Everything being this about the plumbing issues, about do's, about don'ts, about trying it is so much more larger spectrum.
It reaches out to a bigger audience.
Yeah.
And recently, I've been told by a brand that so I worked with them a couple of times, and they said the reason why we like coming back to you is because your reels are even reaching the contractors. Your reels are even reaching out, and although I make English content, it's still reaching out to a wider audience because the way you explain things, आपकी reel दिखा के shopkeepers and contractors आपका point समझा देते हैं.
Oh wow.
So
So
I would take it as a
audience-
compliment.
आप अच्छा ना क्योंकि आप
Yeah.
इंटीरियर डिजाइनर का अगर आप टोटल सेगमेंट देखोगे
Yeah.
तो वो एक आप लिमिटेशन है आप उस
Yeah.
सेगमेंट को क्योंकि सब लोग नहीं देखेंगे अगर आप शॉपकीपर्स और कॉन्ट्रैक्टर्स को अगर सेगमेंट में लाओगे दे डू 80% स्टिल दे डू
Yeah.
80% ऑफ द
Yes.
मार्केट
Like I said,
80%.
80% of people don't hire architects and then वो आज भी अपने contractor की बात सुन के प्लाई लेने जाते हैं. So I tell you an example. My chachu has a tile shop, barking fittings and stuff, and I made a content piece in his showroom explaining about the different types of vitrified tiles and which should be applied where. That reel went viral, and if you see my content, I get more shares than likes. People share my video than likes. That metric is and that saves her also more, and I think that's the reason why I've got more followers also over time. So that reel went viral, was shared so much on WhatsApp also. So reels are not only shared on Instagram, the YouTube shorts are also shared on WhatsApp. You know, contractors and all groups pay the that reel went round, round, round and came back to my showroom. And what people were doing, they were putting their number and their shop कि हमारे पास भी ये tie है. Because it was a generic reel explaining what Bitify ties. क्योंकि वो समझाना आसान हो गया ना कि अब ये वाली यहाँ लगाओ, ये वाली यहाँ लगाओ, GBT क्या होती है, सिंगल चार्ज क्या होती है टाइप. एंड माई चाचू इज टेलिंग मी, ये मेरे टाई वाले ग्रुप में कम्युनिटी में तेरी रील आई है कि हमसे ले लो टाई, बट ये तो मेरे शो पे शॉर्ट भी हो गया. सो दैट्स द amount of shares and that's how the reel is going round and round when people want to explain something. Because how to explain it? Visual medium से better तो कुछ है नहीं और आपको कुछ नहीं करना, बस मेरी रील शेयर करके अपना पॉइंट समझाना. If I'm explaining about a door closer, hidden door closer, and if the carpenter is able to show my video and explain it to the client, ये ऐसे लगेगा. So it's giving me more views.
You collaborated with more than 100 brands, both national, more than 200 brands, both national and international. You have likes of Samsung, Europathic, and so on. So yeah. So what was the surreal moment when you have these kind of collaborations, and how did you manage to do so?
So I think brands come to you very naturally once you reach a certain number. Of course, if you start tagging brands that you're already using, they put you into the eye. After a point of time, it's your relations. I'll be very honest. People come to you naturally, but once you start, it's not the brands.
You never approached
agents.
them.
I have never approached
Never?
them. Never.
Out
Ever.
of 200 brands, you never.
Never. Trust me when I say this. Never. और करा भी है ना 3-4 को तो उन्होंने मुझे जवाब भी दिया.
And you, that's crazy.
So the first one was Flipkart. It was a 3-reel deal at 100K. Then slowly and steadily more brands started coming in. And anyways, I was tagging the brand. और उस time तो बहुत ज़्यादा brands के accounts भी नहीं थे when I started off. So they come to you, they see that, okay, you're creating content, it's adding value. The good part about me and my page is, if I'm at 1 million followers, and even if the reel is reaching, see, you know, just because you're at 1 million followers doesn't mean your reel will go to 1 million people. Even if it's reaching 100K, those 100K people are watching you for content. It's not a lifestyle professional who's working one day talking about fashion, the other day talking about travel. People are watching my reel for interior design content. So they know the value that I bring to the table. If I'm suggesting something, they know the credibility. And I started doing brand collaborations a lot later after building credibility. Oh. It's not that day one se maine brand collabs karna shuru kar. I started getting good collabs after 500K.
Oh.
So for the first 500K, for the first year or so, there were hardly 1 or 2 collabs coming. Last year was amazing because I think a lot of brands realized that rather than hiring celebrities and lifestyle influencers or fashion influencers, now we have a niche of design influencers. Right. So ये बात करें तो ज़्यादा better है ना about the same product. It will create credibility. And luckily I was already using these brands. So I think the moment when I realized that this is also something and I've sort of, you know, something big has happened was when I worked with Polar for the first time. Because that has been a big brand. I've used it on my projects. And for me, at that time, I was like, so very obvious. They approached me and they're contacting me. And even till today, I am like a kid in a candy store. I still have a list of brands which I want to manifest work. No, I have a list which is काम करना, and when they come, Samsung when came in, I was jumping like anything because Samsung, I use a lot of Samsung anyways. And because I'm not from the industry, I don't have connections, I don't know how this works. So if anybody approaches you, you feel very important. You
get the kick.
Even till today, I know it's very stupid. I should be more confident, but even till today, when a brand contacts me or you know, my husband tells me, you know, I've been speaking to them, and it was like that, really? And I feel very happy and excited, especially when I got the international opportunity. We went to Hong Kong twice. We've done that collaboration. It was an all-paid trip and everything. ये lifestyle and all आरो तो बहुत मिलता है ना, ये सब हमें नहीं देता कोई. And I was so fascinated.
What was the story? Which brand was this?
It was not a brand. It is basically a home exhibition that happens every year in Hong Kong. It's a home in style exhibition. So they basically approach a lot of media people from all over the world. And social media is also part of media only. So I was the only influencer both the times.
Oh, wow.
Then there were magazines from Korea, Japan, stuff like that. So I got a network also a lot. So they wanted me to basically come, cover the exhibition and talk about it so that more people in India can know that there's this home exhibition happening there. So I actually manifested it. So I used to see a lot of influencers going to US and stuff like that, fancy stuff. And I put it on my vision board and I'm getting an international collaboration. So I put two things. One, I'm getting an international work opportunity. and second, an international collaboration. And both happened consecutively in 2 months. So first I went to Hong Kong, and then I came back and went to Dubai with a client to buy furniture from Dubai. We went to China many times, but Dubai was a little more fancy. So that's how I got it. They approached us. We checked their credibility. पहले से लगा ना झूठ वूठ तो नहीं है. And then we just went, and they called me again this year. So it was a great opportunity, not just because it was international, but you also get to meet a lot of people from different fields, and how still print media is there, how people are approaching covering events. And they were talking like, हमारी magazine 20,000, 30,000 pieces बिकती है. And I was like, मेरा content piece 1 million jata hai. So now when you're working online, you're working in front of a screen. Even when I'm taking courses, it's a laptop or camera. When you go offline and when you meet people, you understand the impact it's creating, and it's still very surreal. So yes, brand collaboration is something I think that has given me immense happiness. I love doing it. I love working with brands, and I'm a very brand friendly person also. A lot of brands have worked with me know this, because I create it with that as much heart as I create my normal content. So yes, it's been beautiful, and I wish it keeps going on and on, because that's a wonderful part of our work.
Now let's come to the tougher part of this whole conversation. If you had to start your design career all over again from scratch, with no followers, no network, what are the 3 things would you do it differently today that you had done 30 years back or maybe 5 years back?
I mean, honestly, I wouldn't have done anything differently, because all of that has shaped me. But still, if I had to think about it really hard and sort of scratch my brain here, I wouldn't be as emotional as I was, because end of the day doesn't matter. It's all very small. The noise doesn't change, or at that moment you feel बहुत बड़ा हो गया कुछ. Like I still remember crying because the first time a labor took money from me saying मेरी तो बहन की शादी है, वो गायब हो गया, कभी वापस नहीं आया. I cried so much कि भाग गया, मेरे साथ धोखा हो गया. And you know how common that is.
बहुत
सब कुछ होता है ना लेबर के साथ. Same day पे एक्सीडेंट डे होता है, मरता भी है, क्या शादी है. I wish I was more.
सारे प्रॉब्लम दुनिया के उनको ही है,
होते हैं.
कुछ प्रॉब्लम नहीं है.
पर्सनली ले लेती थी. मेरे को एक्चुअल में वो क्लियरली आइड पीयूपी वाला देख के लगता था, हाय ये तो अकेला है, कमाने वाले से बहन अभी इसको पैसे दे देती. I wish I would have done that differently. Secondly, I wish I wouldn't have attached myself so much to clients and people emotionally, because I have failed more times than I have been successful. I'll be very honest. And thirdly, I wouldn't have taken it so seriously. End of the day, it's just
Life
work.
is just
My husband used to tell me, when I met him, he used to tell me, it's just work. Itna kya hai tere liye? Like I used to spoil my mood on vacations, and I used to open my laptop in between things and design आज ही जाना चाहिए, जैसे तो medical emergency हो गई है. I wish I could have taken it a little less personally, not too much to heart and work. But again, वो कैसे सीखोगे, करके ही सीखते. So I think these 3 things probably.
Have you come across underdog design or a design focused brand that really caught your eye lately, be it fashion, product or interiors?
I think a lot of interior product brands which are homegrown nowadays, and I'm even collaborating and working with such, have been like I've been really mesmerized looking at their work, because I'll be very honest, when we started off, it was always about international brands being able to give that kind of quality. Indian brands में issues ही दिखते थे हमेशा. ये deliver नहीं कर पाएंगे, इसमें issues है, वो perfection, वो finishing. Actually, now it has changed. So I think my space also I'm working with for wallpapers are gorgeous wallpapers, very good finish. I put them in my home. My brother-in-law's furniture brand, Crayon Furnitures in Kippilaman only. He's making some really good high quality furniture. Cart Put Down is an Indian homegrown brand for furniture, giving very good high quality furniture, very international standards and level, I feel. So I think I've been approaching, got approached and approached a lot of brands who are Indian homegrown but are giving that kind of quality, design based and very thoughtful, home based, not mass produced or trying to recreate things. Very personalized, customizable, tailor made for your home. These are a couple of brands that I'm really enjoying and have loved exploring.
And this, I think, so this trend is going to continue, because
Yes.
I see when you go to these exhibitions, you see so many brands in rugs, in lights, in laminates, the finishes, flooring.
Yes.
They keep growing.
Yeah, so I think India in general is growing a lot. And trust me when I say this, I've been abroad a lot of times. I've attended a couple of exhibitions as well. The craftsmanship and the design quality and the design details that Indians have now, like furniture brands and how they're going back to like the roots and history of things and sort of I feel now the design style which is trending is very Indian modern. Earlier on used to get inspired from Western cultures, Japanese, Scandinavian and सब वही कर रहे थे. But now I think if you see people are going back to their roots and I've traveled a lot. I think जो हम कर सकते हैं ना, I'm very proudly saying this, a lot of other people still can't do that. We have history, we have culture and we are very rich in what we do.
Right.
So I think now a lot of brands are embracing that rather than trying to copy and become someone else. That is catching my eye a lot and also focusing on sustainability at the same time.
Right.
And another thing which I'm really impressed with recently is that they've changed the definition of luxury and made it functional. Earlier on, luxury was associated with something which is beautiful, aesthetic, can't be touched, very delicate, but now they're making it functional. That is also something which is amazing, which a lot of brands are focusing on.
I think the Tikri, the Bidri work,
Yes.
the play of color.
They're coming back to their
Yeah, and I think so if you see
Yeah.
home abroad, they're all white. They all
they are
very
very
boring.
but they honestly they just have good views.
Mm.
उनमें character नहीं होता if you really think about it. They're nice, but they're just neat and clean, aesthetic, and have a good color palette. But if you see Indian homes, like the ones which are really designed from heart, there's so much soul and character. And foreigners love that. They come to us for that. These same rugs that you're talking about are sold in millions of dollars abroad because they value craftsmanship so much.
Yeah, and the last and the final one, if you had a big billboard outside your home or your office, what would be the message would you like to give to the entire world?
Learn design manifest.
Learn design manifest.
But I already had a manifest.
Collaboration with.
Yes, but I already did manifest billboards, by the way. Very
Yeah, so you did that?
Yes.
Soon we're gonna see one.
No, I have already
Already
been
there.
there. So it again a manifestation story related to this. I met a couple of creative friends at an event and I'm like, billboard pe aam. They're like, कैसे आएगी? You're not even a celebrity, a lifestyle creator, and I'm like, आने वाली हूँ, मुझे आ गया उधर से. I think 2 days later, my husband got a call for an event where I was invited as a chief guest in Raipur. And they said as a part of that, we would be putting 6 billboards across the city. So it was not in Delhi or Mumbai, but still very much there. और manifesting तो ऐसे ही work करती है ना कि अब होगा, कहाँ कैसे होगा, that is also. I went, I kept a picture with it. So I've already been on a billboard, but yes, pretty soon if it could be in my home city, it would be great. But yes, the message would be learn, design, manifest. And I think that can be perceived in so many ways, right?
I think so. That's how we started this one conversation.
Yeah.
Ending the word conversation with. Thanks a lot, Sonika. You be absolutely exceptional. I got to learn a lot. I love your guts. I love the power which you have within you, and you're true yourself. Like you're very true. I would like to end this podcast by the reason why we're having this podcast is this podcast is generally for our branding, Sahi Designs. We are a commercial fit out company. I'm a chartered accountant, so I didn't know how to brand ourselves. Then having this forum as a podcast. Where we could help entrepreneurs, budding designers, people who inspire us to learn a bit more from these meaningful conversations. And thanks a lot again for spending some time and telling us few things about what you do.
Thank you so much. I think that's a great initiative and thank you so much for having me.
Perfect. Thank you.